I didn't even think that was possible.
I didn't either. I couldn't believe it.
Diving stop to his right. J.P. Crawford, the throw to first, and he got him. Holy smokes, what a play by Crawford.
Straight three call, got him.
Out to center again.
Keep carrying, baby, keep carrying.
Goodbye, baseball.
The world has got to take notice of this Mariner ball club.
Welcome to Trident's Up. I'm Max Tanzer alongside Bohn Crane Jr. as we got the inaugural video here on our YouTube channel talking some Seattle Mariners and some Major League Baseball for you guys. We're super excited to bring that content to you. As I mentioned, I'm Max Tanzer alongside Bohn. Bohn, I'm so excited to get this started.
This is going to be incredible. I mean, just the fact that we're able to do this and now start this channel, and I'm really excited just to see it grow over time and for us to just produce more and more content as we go along, as we just hopefully get more and more viewers and subscribers along the way.
Absolutely. We got tons of stuff coming for you guys, whether it's just talking Mariners baseball here in the looming Corona times, and then the season hopefully starting soon. We got some OOTP content, as you guys clicked on for the video description today. So a lot of stuff coming up. And we thank you guys so much for tuning in, and hopefully you guys subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter at TridentsUp_YT. So much coming. And let's start with this video, Bohn. OOTP is a game that you and I have been playing for a while. I think OOTP 12 may have been the first game I played.
That sounds about right. And yeah, you were the one that got me hooked on it. I think I watched you play it a couple of times. You actually let me borrow your Steam account, I think, for OOTP 13. And then I think I finally decided to get it for myself in OOTP 14.
Yeah, and, I didn't know I was getting myself into. If you guys haven't played this game, this isn't even an ad. I'm just speaking from the heart here. It's a phenomenal game. It's so deep. Helps you learn a lot about, the transactions and, the different obstacles and hurdles that general managers have to go through. So it's really fun. As I mentioned, there's so much depth in it. And now a couple years ago, I think it was when they implemented the where you could go and play as old teams. And so Bohn and I had the idea of starting with the 2010 Mariners and going till 2019 to see who could do the best. Not necessarily just that, but compare and contrast the different moves we made. And, maybe Jerry's watching us and we'll be there as assistant GMs or something. But yeah, I can tell you, it was fun. This first part right here is going to be our rebuilding years. So for both of us, that's about 2010 to 2012. And things got crazy for me this whole entire time. And I was going back and forth multiple times, especially here in this first part. You'll see I'm kind of like looming in the try and win now and then try to rebuild, which was very difficult. But I ended up going rebuilding, and I know that's what you did too. So let's start out. I know we put down a couple of goals about what we wanted to see us achieve with these teams. For you, what were your main goals going into this?
So I really like the big thing. So I was going to immediately hop into a rebuild. I really didn't look at like how well we were going to do in the beginning. I really just wanted to rebuild. And so I want to have a relatively successful draft over a couple of years, hopefully ranging from probably 2010 to 2013 was kind of my expectation. And what I was hoping to do is like the 2010 Mariners have a couple of notable veterans on the team. Especially in the pitchers aspect. Cliff Lee, I think was the big one that you and I both saw. David Aardsma was right there in there too. But also guys like Milton Bradley and Sean Figgins were guys that I was like, okay, they're at their peak value, I think. At least in real life they were, and so it's trying to sell them and get really good prospects for the future. So that was kind of my goal right in the beginning. But looking towards the future, I was hoping to obtain a division title by 2014 and appear in the World Series by 2016. So I gave myself kind of like a large timetable to work with.
Yeah, mine's similar to that. So my overall goals were win a World Series by 2016. I put in parentheses for Ichiro. And, because he's been there so long, he deserves the ring.
Yeah.
And a smaller goal, but still big enough by itself, is make the playoffs by 2013. So I was really pushing myself for that one. I'm fun to bring you guys along the story as we made it interesting, at least with those couple of goals. But yeah, so let me get right into mine, Bohn, starting
Yeah.
in 2010. First thing that jumped out to me when I started was looking at the top prospects. And I know it was the same for you, I'm assuming. Was the Mariners only had one top prospect in the top 100, at least according to OOTP at the time, which was Taijuan Walker at 96. And I was like, okay, the farm system is not as strong as I would want it to be. And that made me consider winning now because, as you mentioned, there was a good rotation out there with Felix and Cliff Lee, who are both All-Star and Cy Young candidates. And you got Doug Fister and Jason Vargas as well, who were very solid. So I went out and shopped Taijuan Walker, and I had a couple of options: Justin Turner, Edwin Encarnacion, Matt Carpenter, Lorenzo Cain, Carlos Gomez, and Ian Desmond. And those are interesting names off the bat when you look at how they turned out. But the ratings weren't that high, and since the farm system was weak enough, after that I decided to rebuild. And so then I take a look at the top 100 prospects, and they come out with that before the season, and that was interesting to see all the names. And as the viewers can see right now, here is the top 10. And I'll tell you, Bohn, at some point in this decade, I get 4 of these players. I'm not going to tell you when. We'll figure it out. But I had at least 4 of these players at that time. So I'm very excited with how things worked. And then I made a couple of trades before opening day as well. First one was Brad Nelson. He didn't want to be demoted, didn't have any room for him on my team for my liking. So I sent him over to Pittsburgh for Kevin Hart and $470,000 again. It was just more depth move, and I had to sell Nelson or release him, so I might as well pick up someone. And then here's a big one. Eric Bedard to the Cardinals for David Freese, who had not made his major league debut yet. But I like this move because Freese, obviously we know what he did in real life, but also I think was a guy that could contribute in 2011 and 12 and hopefully carry on. Good defensive ratings as well. So I liked him a lot. And the big 2 things that jumped out at me early in the season now, getting into April, that really stunk was, one, before the season in spring training, Michael Pineda tore his labrum. So he was out for 4 months. And he was a top prospect at the time. So now my farm system is even weaker. And the game actually had Pineda, I believe, starting for me on the opening day roster. I don't know if I would have gone through with that. But so that was a big loss. And then when I saw this, I died. Franklin Gutierrez out 2 to 3 months with a strained hamstring. And Goody was doing well.
Oh, my gosh.
And if you guys don't know, you'll soon learn that Franklin Gutierrez is Bohn's boy. Through thick and thin.
That's the flying things. Franklin Gutierrez is the GOAT of all outfielders. No debate.
Hey, I mean, if he stayed healthy, put up some good years. What's interesting about him too is like earlier parts of like 2008 to 2010, great defensively, and then the bat started to click in like 2015, 16. You got to wonder what could have been if he could have found both of those tools at his peak. But either way, a good April, to say the least. We were hovering around 500. Felix, a 1.14 ERA, a whip of 0.86. Yusmeiro Petit, 3.0, 2.13 ERA. So that's a young guy that I was looking forward to, at least in the beginning. And this is where I made some trades. And this is where I kind of veered a little bit away from my rebuilding stage, but not quite. Because these are going to sound like win-move trades, but they were more of, I'm going to try and get some guys who are going to be good and put up better numbers than the guys I have now, and then maybe ship them off for more younger prospects. So the first one was Milton Bradley. He's hitting a $113. I had to get him out. I had to get him out. And who knows, I didn't look at his ratings, but I'm sure OOTP accounted for the fact that he had some temper issues as well. So maybe he wasn't. Either way, whether that's true or not, I had to get rid of him. So I sent him to the Nationals for Michael Morse, and then Mike Sweeney to the Twins for Michael Kadire, and the Twins would retain 30% of Kadire's contract. And then Sean Figgins, this one was a surprise. And I thought Figgins was off to a slow start, and I wasn't going to, knowing what happened in real life, I wasn't going to mess with that. So I sent him off and Dylan Unsworth for Freddie Sanchez and $550,000 from the San Francisco Giants. And Sanchez was having a very good year, hitting above 320 so far and mid-May this was about. And so I was like, okay, again, Morse and Sanchez are guys that I can definitely ship at the deadline. Kadire, if he could put up good numbers, maybe I could ship him off. The contract is holding back a little bit. So then let's zoom over to June. By then we're about 500, 24 and 26. Called up both Dustin Ackley and David Freese. Ackley was hitting 311 in AAA. So this is a year before Ackley actually got called up in real life, which was interesting to me. They had him develop a lot quicker. And, it was kind of risky because I look at the real move and I'm like, okay, well, this is like a year early because he came up in like June of 2011, I believe it was. So that was a little risky, but he was doing well. But then the worst news of this season hits, and this was terrible, worse than Goody, was that Felix tore his UCL, suffering Tommy John surgery, out 9 to 10 months. And Felix at this point, again, as I said, was like at an ERA of 1.5 or something like that. He ended up finishing top 10 in Cy Young voting, and even made the All-Star game. And he got hurt in like the end of May, beginning of June. So things started to get wild. After this happened, I was like, all right, we're tearing everything apart. There's just no chance. So I made, I think it was 5 trades.
Okay.
After these 5 trades, I'll just say it first, my budget jumped to $9 million, and I went from 1 prospect in the top 100 to 6 in the top 100. And Taijuan Walker's actually pushed out at this point. So really I had 0 going into this in the top 100, turned into 6. So the first one was huge. Sent Cliff Lee over to Oakland, which it's kind of strange that they accepted this because they weren't doing too well at the point either. But I retained 70% of the deal, which is a ton. And this ended up holding me back a little bit, in the later years. But I also sent G-Man Choi over for Josh Donaldson, who was a catcher at the time, Tyson Ross, Ryan Doolittle, Dan McDaniel, and Henry Rodriguez. So all these
that's
prospects,
a large package.
It's a huge package, and I was able to get what I got because at least a couple of those guys turned out pretty well. And remember, Josh Donaldson was one of those guys on the top prospects list, so that's how I got him. Next one was sending Freddie Sanchez, who we acquired from the Giants earlier, while retaining 30% of his deal, and Jose Lopez for Justin Smoke and Christian Benavieva. So I ended up actually getting Smoke. And
Smoke,
again, yeah, and but it's funny because I did send Cliff Lee away, and I did acquire Justin Smoke. Obviously, those were influenced a little bit by what happened in real life, but I think I got better deals out of them overall. Next one was sending David Ardsma and Brandon League, the tandem of relief pitchers, 8 and 9 inning guys for whoever gets them, which in this case was the Brewers, for Lorenzo Cain and Nick Tyson. Cain was the top 100. I believe he scratched out about 96. So again, a guy who I thought could be nice in terms of depth and could come up hopefully in a few years. Next one, Michael Morse. Again, I told you I was going to acquire these guys and ship them off in a couple of months.
Flip them, basically.
Exactly. And Morse was hitting $118 with us. So I flipped him over for Jacoby Ellsbury, who in 2009 put up a phenomenal year, but for some reason was not doing well with the Red Sox. I'll tell you this. I'll spoil this too. Jacoby Ellsbury never played a big role for me, which shocked me because when I initially acquired him, I was thinking, wow, this is like kind of a steal. But he never put up the numbers that he did in 2008 and 2009. So I was pretty disappointed in that. Next one, sending Jason Vargas to the Cardinals for Matt Carpenter and Fernando Salas. Like this one a lot too. Carpenter, very much like David Freese, a guy who was up and coming, pretty young, but I thought was going to be solid, consistent. He wasn't at the same caliber as Josh Donaldson and being, a top 3 prospect, but still a guy who I thought could come up and put up good numbers. And Salas, again, more bullpen depth. So, and as a result, as I mentioned, we jumped $9 million in our budget from this, which was great. And we now have 6 prospects in the top 100. So, overall, that was basically the summary of the season because then I kind of just let the young guys play. And I'll tell you my personal awards in a second here for them. But overall, we finished 67 to 95, 22 games out. The season score was 140 out of 1,000, so not good at all.
Wow.
But I was still happy with what we did. I was kind of in between making some weird moves. In real life, I would definitely be sending the fan base in opposite directions. So I don't know how well that would work, but I finally had felt committed to one spot, which was rebuilding, and I felt we had a good core of prospects. And more to come as we had the 3rd overall draft pick in that draft that year.
Wow.
But going on, Indians over the Dodgers in 5 games of the World Series.
Okay.
So, yep, they got their ring. And then Justin Morneau and Joey Votto were MVPs in the American and National League, respectively. So just that for fun. We can compare that. And then my personal awards. So my MVP, it's interesting, did not mention his name at all in that little recap, but Jack Wilson was very good. And this was
Let's go.
This was a walk year for him. So he's going to get paid after this. I hit 283, 33 doubles, 3.6 WAR, which led the team. Again, nothing spectacular, but still very good, especially compared to Jack in real life, who was so good defensively. And, I think he was an all-star in 04, 05, the Pirates. But
with the Pirates.
But besides that, hadn't really had any breakout offensive seasons. So he had that with us. I think he ended up going to the Cubs the next year. Next one's Cy Young. This guy has quite a ride with me. And can you guess who my Cy Young is?
Well, I mean,
I haven't mentioned his name yet. I love him to death in this game, though.
I can't even imagine. I mean, did you trade for them?
Nope, he came up in the organization. One of the few guys that actually like stayed with me the whole
Is
time
it
almost.
Taiwan Walker?
It is not no, no, no. Interestingly enough,
Ooh.
or actually I'll keep it. But yeah, my Cy Young was Erasmo Ramirez.
Wow.
At 20 years old, 3.18 ERA, an ERA plus of 137, so well above average in that case.
Okay.
I was expecting him to be bolstering the staff for the next season, given the fact that we lost Lee and Felix and Vargas. So him and Fister were really the two guys left, along with some of the prospects I got. And then unsung hero, David Freese, very good in his rookie season, 262, 26 doubles, very respectable, very solid guy I was looking for in the future. Most disappointing, Felix, of course, who was so great.
It has to be Felix.
Yeah, 1.53 ERA and 112 innings. Still was top 10 in Cy Young voting, as I mentioned. And I think I was projecting him to come back in May. But the thing is that this was a contract year for him after 2011. So, it's kind of like, do I extend him? Because there's a little uncertainty whether he could bounce back from the surgery or not. So I was a little nervous. So that was a big decision I had to make coming up. So now I'll go into my off season, and then I'll head it over to your 2010.
Okay.
So the first move I made was sending closer for me that year, Kinkoa Teixeira and Jonathan LaMotta, who's very respectable, to the Nationals for Tanner Roark, who was a top pitching prospect. He was in the top 100. Brad Mayers, a right-handed pitcher, and Livon Hernandez. Roark, I thought, showed a lot of promise, and Hernandez was just another veteran starting piece I could bring in to eat some innings up and maybe help the younger guys. Next, I also sent Robert Rodriguez, a minor leaguer, to the Angels for Fernando Rodney. They retained 100% of the contract, which they somehow agreed to. I'll take it. Again, cheaper piece for the pen who had put up good numbers. Again, guy had been in the league for a bit to kind of fill in for the void of now losing Ardsma and League in that trade. So again, more depth. That's what those two trades were all about. But I really was excited to get Tanner Roark as well because I think he could have added a lot to my rotation. So now to the draft. And this was a game-changing draft for me. So we had the third overall pick. And for some reason, the draft for both you and I was in December in this game, which is weird. Usually in real life, it's in June. But it was in December. Third overall pick, I had the choice between Bryce Harper and Jose Fernandez. And I went with Jose Fernandez. I really wanted to go with Harper, but I love Jose Fernandez in real life. And I thought after, losing Felix to the injury, the future was a little uncertain with him. I was going to go with him. He was going to be our guy. So that was who I went. And that really wrapped up our season. But, one of the other things just to talk about before I send it over to you, Pineda coming back from the injury. We're going to explore him going into a relief pitch or now pitching as a relief pitcher. And our owner's postseason goal moves from 2013 to 2017. And I'll tell you, I was disrespected after I saw that. Our goal in my heart is still 2013. 2017, I was upset. We're going to prove him wrong. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. What a season that is. That's very incredible. Well, I think that my season, it's going to be very, very fun to explain. I think you're going to get a kick out of this.
Okay, I'm
so,
excited.
As I mentioned, for me, the goal to just this season was to rebuild. But I noticed immediately in my organization, there was a big hole that was missing, that was unfilled. I realized how big of a problem this was, and that I did not have an assistant general manager. And having someone like that is huge, especially when they can provide recommendations for doing trades and people to acquire. And so I hired Frank Wilcox as my assistant general manager. And so that was just like a really nice thing to do. But I also set essentially what I wanted to trade for in OOTP. It's a really cool thing that you can do, and we can really benefit from it. And what I was kind of just looking for was young prospects. But I don't know if you ran into the same problem. In this game, teams will send you the most ridiculous trades. Like you're like,
I ignore all of them, dude. The only trades I pay attention to are the ones that I send myself or that I shop. I never listen to the ones they send me because they're always horrible.
Exactly, they're ridiculous. And so everyone wanted Taiwan Walker. Everyone. I was getting absurd offers for Taiwan Walkers, and it got so annoying to the point where I just put him on like untouchable. Like I was not going to let him be claimed. And so I was just going to start making trades right away. And so the first guy that I shopped was Brandon League. and I traded him to Miami for Rex Brothers, who was just like a small relief pitching prospect in their organization, obviously just trying to increase the bullpen. And just looking like at his potential, he seemed to have a lot of stuff, but a little bit wild. So I was like, okay, this is like an Edwin Diaz kind of situation. Really filthy, just like lacking a bit of control.
Was he a starter at first, or was he a reliever?
I think he was a starter.
Okay, are you going to Edwin Diaz him, or are you going to turn him into a reliever?
I eventually adjust him a little bit as we go on. So Rex Brothers was a really nice acquisition, but the Marlins GM was really, really difficult to negotiate with. So I was really just happy I could get that out of the way. And so one thing that was really huge in this, and one last name you're going to hear a lot as we go on season by season, is the Sweeneys. Mike Sweeney was having an unbelievable year. He was hitting like 300. And so when it came to like trading people, I didn't want to get too far ahead to the point where I didn't want to jump the gun too early, where I was like, oh, like obviously I needed to trade this guy before opening day. Yeah. You know, I wanted to let them pan out to try and have them reach their max ability. And for Mike Sweeney, he did just that. I mean, he was hitting in insane ways that I had never even heard of Sweeney being able to play. And so I started shopping him around. And just for example, he was batting 353 towards the end of April. And so that was just absolutely incredible. And so I was going to take advantage of that. So I made a trade with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and this trade changed our organization. We received their number one prospect in Tony Watson, who was huge, as we will talk about this more and more, and Starling Marte. So
I'm shocked that they would, for a guy who had just put up one good month. I mean, and Sweeney has a good track record, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But, you know, he's up in the age, you know, at that point.
Yeah, he was in his upper 30s.
Yeah.
And so in exchange, we also had to give up Taylor Stanton and Steven Landeruzzi.
Oh, you gave up Stanton. Okay. I used Stanton. Stanton plays a big role for me in later. Okay.
Yeah. So that was a tough decision to make, but I was like, I have to just take advantage of Sweeney, you know, just producing really well for us. And so I had Watson and Marte kind of just sit there for a little bit in the minor leagues. But one thing that was really big kind of for me as this went on was team chemistry. It's something that really kind of what bothered me was that Felix is actually listed as a slacker and a selfish player. And that was causing some issues in the clubhouse as it went on. And so it was frustrating to see that. But one guy who was really just a big prospect for us who comes up later is Matt Lawson. And I don't know if he played a role for you at all.
He did not, no.
But Matt Lawson was having a phenomenal year. But obviously the big one that you and I kind of talked about, or you really hit on, was Michael Pineda, right? He was the big guy, and a lot of people were requesting trades for Pineda, but I'll get into him as kind of we go down.
Did he tear his labrum for you too?
Not necessarily.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah, not necessarily. But, you know, in May, at May, we were sitting right at 500. So we were 25-25. Jack and Josh Wilson were our leadoff hitters.
Beautiful.
And Goody was hitting third, and Greg Hallman was hitting fourth.
Was Goody hitting third just because you love him so much, or was it justifiable?
He was producing.
Okay.
He was really putting up good numbers, as you'll see right here on the screen. But he was really just doing great things for us. And then our second trade happened. Cliff Lee, big guy that I needed to trade. And so I was kind of curious about who would retain more of the contract.
I think I did.
I actually beat you by 5%.
So you did 65?
I retained 75.
Okay. You retained more. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I made a trade. I sent Cliff Lee to the White Sox and got Chris Sale and Eduardo Escobar. And that was all I needed to do for that trade. So those guys eventually, I mean, as we'll talk more and more, I'm really excited to kind of talk about like our future as the years go down and we bring up these trades that we made in 2010 and
Yeah.
to see them like fully develop. The funny part about it all, though, is that the White Sox were basically bankrupt after the trade. They had no
Even though
money
you retained
available.
75% of it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
So that was really funny. But something that was even funnier is occasionally I would go and check the OOTP news, and Mike Sweeney reportedly after this trade wanted out of Pittsburgh. He wanted to
no.
leave. He was so frustrated, and he was hitting 200. So
Oh, no.
he was so frustrated. So that was a huge
Perfect.
win.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were kind of getting closer to the deadline. And so my goal was kind of to ship off guys like David Arnsma and A. Wilson. So either Jack or Josh. It didn't matter which Wilson. I just wanted to send one away.
Okay.
And so I was trying to trade Jack Wilson and get the most value. And so I ended up doing that. I traded him for Brett Wallace and David Carpenter from the Astros.
Yeah.
Just kind of like a small trade. You know, I wasn't expecting a ton of value. But it's interesting to hear that Jack really dominated for you. For Jack, I was kind of able to
I wouldn't
trade
say
him for this-
dominated, but for a year that, was very underwhelming, he was our best player. It was very good in compared to
Yeah.
the actual 2010 he had.
Yeah. And so that was kind of something that we just kind of made. And unfortunately, like, as things went on, we really went downhill. So Goody, his first injury occurred on June 22nd
Yeah.
with a
It's inevitable.
with a sore elbow. I know. So
Oh,
a sore
that's
elbow,
never good. That always starts.
never good. And so then I'm like, okay, we have to continue just trading. And so I almost pulled the trigger on this trade. The Cubs offered me DJ LeMahieu for Michael Pineda.
Okay.
Straight up. It was very tough, but I turned it down.
You should
banking
go
on-
back and look how LeMahieu turned out.
Right, banking that Ackley would do well.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting to see how that obviously plays out as I reveal more. So then I traded Jose Lopez for Chase Darno. Another trade I made with the Pirates. The Pirates were like the people I loved trading with. Loved making deals with the team in the Steel City. Jose was gone. And then someone really, really was upset about the trades I was making. They were not happy at all. And this is really, really sad. But Ichiro requested a trade out of Seattle. He so frustrated. He was done. He wanted out.
I mean, I guess it was like 2.5 years early.
Yeah, so this was in July that he requested this. July 1st.
Oh,
So we were 30 and 47. And so I kind of shopped him. And nobody was interested. Absolutely nobody wanted Ichiro. And so I finally decided to make the trade. And I was able to do it, but I had to send Jason Vargas as well.
Oh, so okay, I really hope you still got someone good for Vargas because he's still, a good arm.
So I did. I got Adam Warren, who was a starting pitching prospect. So obviously he came to Seattle
Future
way
real
early.
manner, yeah.
Exactly. And Eduardo Nunez.
Okay.
So those two guys, I thought I was pretty happy with it, but I had to retain 45% of Ichiro's contract.
Okay,
So
I think at that point he had a year and a half. I think he was a free agent after 11. So that's interesting that they really didn't want it that much. But okay, interesting.
Yeah, so I made that. Fans were – I can't even begin to explain how upset they were. And not only that, the team was upset, not because Ichiro was gone, but because Vargas was gone. Apparently he was a phenomenal leader in the
I thought you were looking at the chemistry, Bohn.
I know. I made a horrible mistake. So Vargas was gone, and it was just bad. But then we had two All-Stars. So Mark Lowe and Felix Hernandez were All-Stars.
Good for Mark Lowe.
Yeah, it was nice. I was able to ship David Arnsma, traded him for Kyle Kendrick, who's a starting pitching prospect, and so he was really good. August, I mean, it all kind of just it went down, and we really just struggled. Taiwan struggled mightily. He was just doing.
Did you have him
bad.
at the big league level?
I did not. I still had him in the minors, but I
Okay,
was just
good.
checking
Yeah.
on him.
I was gonna say
And
that would have been early.
he really struggled. And so we're at September now, and we're 46 and 86.
Oh no.
We're really bad. And I do another check to see kind of how everyone's doing, and it turns out Jason Vargas got pitcher of the month of September. So just when I think this couldn't get any worse, it ends up getting worse.
Well, you just gotta hope at that point Nunez blossoms and Warren.
Exactly. And so I had called up Marte and Escobar up to AAA in September because they were really doing well in the minors. And then, September wrapped up, and we finished 2010 with a record of 54 and 108.
Oh no! I mean, that's pretty close to how they did in real life. To be fair, I think they lost 110 that year.
It's something like that. So it was a really, really rough year. But team MVP was Goody. He hit 254.
I don't know if I did. That could be so biased.
He had 144 hits. He was like the mainstay of the team.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough.
Cy Young was Felix. He had a 2.47 ERA. Had a solid win-loss record with 17-9. So 17 wins on the year, which is really, really solid. Over 33 games.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
And 200. He reached the 200K plateau. So I was like, okay, that's not too bad.
That's very good.
Right. It was phenomenal from him. Pineda was really disappointing. Most disappointing player. I really expected more. He was 2-13 in 20 games started, and had an ERA of 5.19.
Yeah, well, that's another situation where they suggested to put him on the roster, but in real life he didn't come up to 11 as well. So it's where it's like you just have to, take a risk, and I guess that one didn't work.
Yeah, it was tough. Unsung hero Mike Wilson, actually. Big Mike came through, had 20 home runs, led the team that year, 67 RBIs and 118 hits, so a solid year. And our top prospect really was Chris Sale. I was really amped about him. In the World Series, I remember this was so sad. A surprise team. The Marlins ended up going to the World Series that year, only to be beaten by the Red Sox in 6. I was so upset. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, our season score came in.
Oh no! Did you do better than 140? You got a 1. You got a 1. I didn't even think that was possible.
I didn't either. I couldn't believe it. I got a 1. A 1.
I
could put up my 2010 season score on one hand, on one finger.
I think we could just end this series and say you lost. That's tough, man. That is tough.
It was horrible. So our owner goals come in, and the owner literally verbatim says, "Don't suck completely." That was the goal. That was the goal, along with upgraded third base. So that was the goal.
I thought I was disrespected by him pushing back the postseason, expectations. But, oh, no. All right, that's a big hole. I believe you could come back in that one, though.
Yeah, it was bad. And
that is hilarious.
Yeah, Joey Votto and Beltre ended up getting the MVPs that year.
Okay.
We nearly lost Goody to free agency, so that was really scary.
Oh, no.
But, kind of an off-season trade that we made, we acquired Marcell Ozuna and Brad Hand from Miami. But we had to give up Chris Source, Dylan Unsworth, and Jabari Blash.
Okay, I ended up giving up Unsworth. Blash played a little bit for me in the future years.
Nice. And then draft picks also went with Jose Fernandez.
Okay.
And so for me, I was kind of looking at kind of my outfield. I mean, Harper was the other one big up there, but I felt pretty confident. I thought Goody would be the mainstay, and along with Ozuna and Marte in the outfield. And I thought that would be a great outfield.
I'm
if
excited to
they're-
see if Goody can stay healthy for you.
if they all pan out. And then a couple other guys we drafted, Austin Barnes, a catcher.
Okay, yeah.
And then we actually drafted Dan Vogelback. So I was pretty pumped about that.
In my game, Dan
Uh,
Vogelback is like a perennial all-star in the late 2000s, like from 2016 and on.
Yeah. And so I was really psyched about getting all of them. And then Dan turned down our offer and decided to go back to college. So that kind of hurt. I won't lie. And then free agency moves didn't really make a ton. The only person that we signed, when we re-signed Goody to keep him on a 5-year deal for $10 million.
Per year?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Hopefully that works out for you.
And then we also signed Ben Zobrist, just like a veteran utility guy that we could
At that
put
point,
around.
younger though. I like that. Yeah.
Right. And so that was a 2-year deal. So it was like a small deal for $7 million. So I was pretty excited about that. And we were then just like ready to go and on to 2011.
That is fantastic. I love that. That's going to wrap up part 1 of 10 here for this OOTP series where Bohn and I attempt to rebuild the Mariners starting from 2010 going all the way to 2019. We'll have parts 2, 3, 4, and so forth coming out in the next couple of days. For Bohn Crane Jr., I'm Max Stanzer. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Tridents Up today. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.